you crying about the dead person, or are you crying about yourself? Because the Baal Musa has to know why he's crying. Is he crying because his friend passed away? Is he crying because, wait a minute, I could be next. He's my age, right? So I'm like nervous. That's what I'm crying about, right? Because you should be crying for the dead person. You shouldn't be crying for yourself, right? So Rabbi Yisrael Santa was always suspicious about, is the person really putting themselves under the microscope, right? So Rabbi Yisrael Santa said, if we put ourselves under the microscope between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, how many people are going to really do tshuva? How many people are going to really actually decide, this Avera I'm not going to do again. This Avera I regret, right? This Avera, right, I'm going to leave forever. I'm going to stop doing it and leave forever, right? How many people are going to be able to really do that in the next 10 days? So he says, very few people. Right? He's a pessimistic person. He says, but there is one way to get through here without doing tshuva. He figures a way, how do you get past Yom Kippur without doing tshuva? So he comes up with a very interesting idea that the Mussar movement really started pushing. The idea is, Rabbi Yisrael Santa said, the Jewish people as a whole always get through the Day of Judgment. The Jewish people as individuals, that's when the problem starts. I'll give you an example. It's not maybe the best example. It's not the. It's a little bit of a sensitive example. The Holocaust. Okay, 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust, but the Jewish people remained. Okay, the Jewish people as a people remained. Right, as miraculous as it was, they remained. They actually did pretty well. Okay, after a few years, they really, regrouped and they created a Medinas Yisrael, and Judaism started sprouting in the United States and in other places as well, right? So Rabbi Yisrael Santa says, and he brings sources for it, that the Jewish people as a whole, Knesset Yisrael, always gets through the Day of Judgment. They're never going to be destroyed. If they're never going to be destroyed, that means they get through the judgment, right? They get through always a judgment that says, you got another year. He says individuals don't always get that. So the trick is to become so much part of the Jewish people that you're not separate anymore. That you actually become like sort of connected with what we call Knesset Yisrael as opposed to being an individual. So his student, Reb Simcha Zisel Ziv, the Alter of Kelm, writes, Aval imit karev l'Knesset Yisrael. If someone gets close to what we call Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish people, the Knesset Yisrael, kigon lisa ba'oli mahem, to empathize with their problems, the Jewish people's problems, ulishtadel liyot isha rabim tzrichim lo, to be a person, a man that the public needs. Right? V'lo yeshev bekeren zavit, and he won't sit in this corner, right? Sit bekeren zavit habayit in the corner of the house. V'shalo lid'og la'acherim kiyim latzmo, and not to worry about others. It's the Day of Judgment. I got to worry about myself. I'm not going to worry about you guys, right? He says that may work, but it doesn't have a very good chance. So the best thing to do is to try to help the public as much as you can. That's what the Bali Musa said. Because if I attach myself to Knesset Yisrael, to Klal Yisrael, then I go through. I go through. I don't have any problem. I'm not an individual. By the way, you see it already in the Rishonim. In the Rishonim, the Rabbeinu Bachaya writes about the Shunamit in Sefer Malachim. Right? The Shunamit, Elisha stayed by her house. He was extremely impressed with her. And he said, do you want me to speak to the king? I have clout. Do you want me to speak to the king or the head officer about you? Do you need anything? Like, you need a tax break, Arnona. Jews are always into getting you that, little protection, right? And she says, B'toch ami anochi yoshaveh. In the midst of my nation I dwell. Don't speak about me. So Rabbeinu Bechaya comments it. He says like this. Ukein she heshiva Shulamit leElisha b'toch ami anochi yoshevet klomar. I don't. This means to say, I don't want you to pray for me in front of the king or in front of the messenger. Now, the king over here, the Rabbi Yitzchak is saying, is referring to God. Okay, and the messenger is one of God's messengers, like the Malachim. Mutav li sheyeh inyani nechlal b'chlal harabim. It's better that I'm part of the public, right? Included in the public. V'lo nifretet pene anish. And don't specify my name, maybe I will be punished. V'yadua ki oto hayom shekosav vayehi hayom. And it's known that it says over there, vayehi hayom, it was the day that Elisha came to her and said, do you want me to speak to the king? Rosh Hashanah hayah. It was Rosh Hashanah. Says that on Rosh Hashanah we don't pray for ourselves. We pray for the whole world. Because that's what the Shunamit was. She says, if I pray for myself, who says I'm going to be here? Then God's going to look at me. What are my chances of getting through? And the Shunamit was no pushover. She was pretty chashiv. Right? And yet she said, no, I don't want you. So Rabbi Yisrael Salanter and his students pushed this idea. You want to get through the day of judgment, God is judging, so I have a trick. So don't be an individual. Don't sit in the corner and say, I got to worry about myself. I got to worry about the Jewish people. Because if the Jewish people get through, and I help them get through, by being someone that the public needs, right? That doesn't mean that I should push myself on the public and say, I need you to need me. No, they have to need you. Right? So you can find things that the public needs you to do, right? Volunteers and stuff, right? I'll give you an example. I really don't want to do a certain job on Rosh Hashanah. I really don't want to do that job. But I've been doing the job for over 10 years, right? They asked me in the shul where I daven to be the makri. The fellow who calls out the tkiyah from, and I really don't even want to daven in that shul on Rosh Hashanah. I have another place that I like better. But they really need me. So I say, I'm not going to pass this one up. They really need me, so that's good. I am a person that is needed by the tzibur. If I'm needed by the tzibur, I go through the green line, not the red one, right? So in other words, we all have things which can, in a way, when we think about it, no siba olam chavero. That's one of the things he says. He says actually three things. One is no siba olam chavero. What is the idea when I empathize with my friend, with my my neighbor or something? What am I really doing? I'm attaching myself to my neighbor. Empathy means not sympathy. Empathy. My grandfather used to say like this: the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu became the leader of the Jewish people is because of empathy, not because of sympathy. Right? And we always look around. What made Moshe Rabbeinu this great leader? We look around, he must have been, today they would write, when he was 2 years old, he was making brachas, and he was 3 years old, he made a bracha on his mother's milk, even though he was still nursing, and when he was 3, he knew Shas by heart, Moshe Rabbeinu, right? So, what do we find in the Torah? They don't talk about his Shas, they don't talk about his brachas, they say, there's a couple of stories, and then all of a sudden God appears to Moshe. It's really sort of anticlimactic, right? One of the stories, Moshe Rabbeinu walks out, and he sees an Egyptian hitting a Jew. And he can't handle it, so he kills the Egyptian, right? He runs off to Midian, right? And in Midian, he sees that the daughters of Yisro, who are, Roei Tzon, they're sheep herders, right? For their dad, I guess he didn't have any sons, so he had them as sheep herders, right? He sees them being abused by the shepherds, and he goes and he helps them. Now think about it. Moshe Rabbeinu was a wanted person. Today he would have his wanted poster in every post office, right? Because King Paro wanted to kill him. It says clearly he ran away because he wanted to kill him, right? So wouldn't you think that he comes to Midian, that he sees something going on at the well, he would mind his own business? You would think that. So our grandfather says that's what you would be normal. Moshe Rabbeinu could not mind his own business. He saw abuse, and he saw in Egypt abuse, he couldn't mind his own business. he saw, and it wasn't in his interest, of course. He was in the palace of the king. He saw abuse in Midian. He couldn't mind something. And then right after that, God goes to speak to Moshe. So he says, what you see is that Moshe's leadership grew out of the fact that he was able to be empathetic to another person. So much to the extent that he couldn't resist. If he saw something terrible happening, saw abuse happening, he had to do something about it. That means he felt the pain of that Jew who was being tortured by the Egyptian, or he felt the pain of the daughters of Yitro being tortured, being abused by the sheep herders, the male sheep herders. That's really what gave him the right, or to be the leader of the Jewish people. Not the fact that he knew how to make a bracha when he was 2, or he knew Shas. This is what gave him the right to be a leader of the Jewish people, is that he was empathetic, right? And Moshe Rabbeinu actually says it, because in Parshas Korach, Moshe Rabbeinu says, I didn't even take one chamor from you, right? Lo chamor achad nasati, right? I didn't even take one donkey from you guys, right? When he was complaining, when they were questioning his leadership. So what does Rashi say? When I came to Egypt, I came to get you guys out of Egypt, right? I could have charged you for a donkey, right? Donkey gets gasoline and everything. I could have charged you to take you out of Egypt, right? I didn't even borrow. So what is Rashi trying to say? So I guess I said, what Rashi's trying to say over there is, I didn't feel I was doing you a favor. I was so empathetic that I was doing it because of me. Because I was in pain. Because since you were in pain, I was in pain. Right? And that's what it means. By the way, when Shimshon wants to get his strength back, right? So Shimshon says to God, he's tied up by the Philistines, right? And he says, Zochreini no v'chazkeni. Remember me and make me strong. So what does he want God to remember? So Rashi says, Zochreini no zechores rim shana sheshafateti es Yisrael. Remember, 20 years I judged the Jewish people. V'lo amarti lachad mehem haver li makel zemi makom l'makom. And I never asked one Jew to take my stick, to take my staff and take it from place to place. Do me a favor, take this. I didn't have one shamus. Many of the leaders, they always have like the shamus. The rabbis have the shamus. So I never asked anybody to do anything for me in 20 years. What does he want there? He wants to show that, you know what, I was a real leader. I didn't view the Jewish people like, I'm doing them a favor. I didn't ask for any favors. I was so empathetic to the Jewish people, right, that I didn't ask them to do anything for me because I was doing it for myself. Because when you empathize, you put yourself in that position of that person so much, right, that you don't see the difference anymore between yourself and them. So of course you're not going to demand a donkey for it, right, because it's you, right? That's the idea. He says, you become connected with the other person, right? When a person does something that the rabbim needs, they become connected to the rabbim. They become connected to the public, right? And that's why they give these examples, right? Because these are the ways that you become a person needed by the public and become part of what we call Knesset Yisrael. And then, of course, you're not an individual anymore. And the trick is to not be an individual during this time. Because a lot of people think that exactly, I have to worry about myself now. Now I have to cut myself off and worry about myself, and I go into my little room and I have to learn Mussar. Right? No. Bali Mussar themselves said you don't have to do that during this time. During this time you have to actually, work with the other people. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, we all know that Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, right, on Yom Kippur, got up, right, in Vilna, where there were some very great Torah scholars, right? There was a cholera epidemic in Vilna, and Rabbi Yisrael Salanter didn't ask anybody. He got up in the main shul in Vilna. There was probably 1,000 Jews there, right? According to the testimony of a number of people, he got up on Yom Kippur morning and he made Kiddush. Yom Kippur morning, he made Kiddush. Okay? Why? Because he said there's a cholera epidemic and people are going to want to be machmir. So if they see that not everyone is eating, right, they want to be machmer. And if you don't eat and drink during cholera epidemic, you can die very easily. So he got up and he made Kiddush. And of course, the rabbis in Vilna, right, the Dayanim, there was no rabbi of Vilna, but there were a number of very famous judges. They're actually in the back of the Talmud, right? If you look at the Vilna editions, you'll see that those judges have commentaries in the back of the Vilna edition, which we use. That's the Vilna edition. That's what the art scroll uses, the Vilna edition, right? They're all in it. They came to Rabbi Yisrael Salanter and they said, how do you have the chutzpah to do that? You know, we paskin that every individual has to come and we'll decide whether they should break their fast. He said, I'm not asking you. You know, this is something that the tzibur needs. And he said, this is, to me, this is going to get me through Yom Kippur tremendously. Like normally you'd think he would be nervous if everybody in Vilna is eating. He said, this is going to make my year. This is not going to be successful. Because, the tzibur need me to do it because you guys wouldn't have done it. Now, the truth is, my grandfather told me that they decided they could excommunicate him for doing it. But he said to them, if you do that, I'm going to passel every get, every divorce decree document in Vilna for the last 200 years. And I have a question, because they did a document according to the Beit Shmuel, and he had a few questions on the Beit Shmuel that they couldn't answer. And he told them, here you go like the Beit Shmuel, I have a few questions, and see if you can answer them. And he said, if you don't answer it, I'll pass all the gittin in Vilna. So they got scared, because they couldn't answer the question he had on the Beit Shmuel, right? So they left him alone. They didn't put him in excommunication, but they wanted to excommunicate Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, right? Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, right? That was one Yom Kippur. There was another famous Yom Kippur when he didn't show up in shul. We all know, right? Everybody was in shul, all the men and women in shul, and he didn't show up. Why? Because he was babysitting, right? It's a very famous story. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was passing by a home, and he heard a baby crying, and he went in. Right? Now you would understand a person of the stature of Yisrael Salanter. I can't even describe the stature of Yisrael Salanter. He was a tremendous Talmid Chacham. He was a genius, a tremendous Talmid Chacham. And you understand if he created the Muslim movement, what kind of personality he was, right? And on Yom Kippur, you can't think. You know, you pass someone's house and the baby's crying. What do you usually do? You make sure you don't go in there, right? And then you see them hear a baby crying, you assume that someone's in there going to take care of the baby. Right? Rishon Salanter hears the baby crying. He looks through the window and he sees a little girl sleeping. And the baby's in the little cradle. And the baby's crying. Right? Rishon Salanter goes in and puts the bottle in the baby's mouth. Right? And the little girl wakes up. And since it's already the Shkia time, she's a little afraid to be by herself because her mother, of course, went off to shul. The mother and father went off to shul and left the 6-year-old baby sitting for the smaller baby. And Rishon Salanter waited there till the mother came home after Kol Nidre. The mother came home, and she walked into the house, and you can imagine her face, right? She was like in a state of shock. And Rishon Salanter is there, rocking the cradle, and schmoozing with the 6-year-old, right? And Rishon Salanter comes into shul in the middle of Ma'ariv, right? Comes to shul in the middle of Ma'ariv, and he tells his students who wondered about it after the Shemona Esrei, he tells them that he knows this year it's going to be a good year for him. He's going to get through the green line. Because he said, right at the beginning of Yom Kippur, that I could do such a chesed for somebody, right? That I could help a little child when they were very afraid. I didn't leave them alone, right? So that's something that's a chesed that, of course, that's not sitting in your own 4 cubits. It's a chesed that you're sympathetic to somebody, you're empathetic to the little girl, right? We think we have to be empathetic to big people, but we have to be empathetic to little people too, of course. So the idea is that the Muslim movement had a whole different take on the idea of what gets you through Yom Kippur, right? You know, my grandfather, you know, I always had a lot of chutzpah with Rabbi Yaakov. So I once said to Zaidi, you know, you don't learn that much every day. He was already like in his early 80s. I said, you don't learn too much. I see people coming in to see you, right? He always had a Gemara on the table. And when people went out, he opened up the Gemara, and then people went in. Or he had to go away. He had to go to an Aguda meeting or a Torah Masorah meeting. And this. So I said, Zaidi, do you feel bad that you don't learn every day? So he says, you know, until I was 70, I used to feel bad. I didn't learn. If I didn't learn enough, I felt bad. But now I don't feel bad anymore. Why? Just because you're only supposed to live 70 years. That's what you're supposed to do, normal, right? It says Shivim Shana, right? It says until a person lives for 70 years. The B'Gvur, Shmonim, if you're lucky, 80 years, right? So I know 70 years you're supposed to live. At that time he was probably 82, 83. He said, those years that God gave me after 70 were not for me. I didn't view that they were for me. He called it in Yiddish, Gegeben Yarim, given years. He didn't give it for me. He gave it for the people who need me, for the public that needs me. So, of course, I don't feel bad because this is what I'm here for. I'm here to help the public. Else, why would God give me these years? They don't give it for you. They gives it for the help. Because he knew that I could be helpful for the public. So he gave me more years. So, of course, I feel I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So why should I feel bad? Right? So he felt like that really the whole year. That, that I can help the public out the whole year. And I don't have to feel bad that I don't. But during aseres yemei tshuva, the Balei Musa say that this idea of being empathetic to people are going through rough times, right? And normally we don't have the time for that. I had a phone call 2 nights ago, right? It was last night actually. I needed to make a phone call to America, so right after the fast I was tired, I went to sleep, and somebody called me. And I know that this person is going to keep you on the phone. She's from America, she's going to keep me there. She already let Esther know what it's about. So like she gave me like the previews, right? And I know she's going to keep me on the phone for an hour, right? So I said to myself, do I really want to call her back, right? And then I started thinking, aseres yemei tshuva, I really want to call her back, right? Because this is a time when the Balei Musa say, you want to get the judgment, you have to be empathetic, right? So I said, you know what, Esther, message her that I'll call her back on Tuesday night. Because I knew I have the shir, so I had to prepare the shir. So I said, tell her I'll call her back on Tuesday. Because the truth is that, people who are in pain, people who are lost, are really, lonely. When a person's in pain, I don't know, physical, emotional pain, a person's in a hospital, they really feel very lonely. Sometimes the loneliness is worse than the pain itself. Right? Shlomo Volba writes it. When he talks about Nosibom Chaver, he says, the Chavetz Chaim, he says, the Chavetz Chaim didn't sit on a comfortable chair during World War I. Even though he was already close to 90, he didn't sit on a comfortable chair because he felt he has to feel the pain of the Jewish people. The Jewish people were having so much pain during World War I that he didn't want to sit on a comfortable chair. And Shlomo Volba actually says his father-in-law, right? Because not always is Nosei Olam Chaveru is something that's negative. It could be if someone has a simcha, to be part of that, right? Sometimes we just say, oh, well, if the person's happy, why do I have to be worried about the person, right? I don't have to empathize with happiness. You only have to empathize with sadness. No, Shlomo Volba says his father-in-law, if he couldn't be by a wedding of a student in Slobodka, right, he would check the time when the dancing was going to take place, and he would start dancing wherever he was. He would just get up and start dancing. He would sing. He records that one time he was in Warsaw, and he was in someone's house, and he looked at his watch, and he saw it was the time when the dancing's supposed to start. He just got up. The guy thought he was crazy. He got up, he started singing a chasana song, and he started dancing around the room. And the guy said, what's going on? I mean, did you lose it? Right? And he said, no, this is the time when the chasana is happening. Right? So that's Nosei Olam Chaveru, and a good thing. To be empathetic, and a good thing to feel with the simcha. Can't be there, but you have to feel with the simcha of the person, right? That's also a challenge. Sometimes it's a bigger challenge because you don't think psychologically they need it, right? But some people do need it. People need that you should be with them in the simcha also, right? So being empathetic, the Balei Musa, when he writes, right, could go lisa ba'oli mahem, right? Ulishtadli is isha arabim tzrichim. That's number 2. To be somebody, to find ways, or I shouldn't say find ways, to find places where the rabbim needs you. There's something that the rabbim needs, right, that wasn't done, that you could do, right? To find ways during this time. And that's where you connect. He says the third thing he says, by the way, he says, in begufo, in b'mamono. Either to do it as a chesed or to do charity. right? In other words, the Rabbim obviously needs charity, certain charity. So at this time is a good time to actually do that. They need you, so you give them more charity. The Rambam talks about laharbos b'tzedakah. He talks about the idea of doing things that the Rabbim need at this time, right? And then he says v'yirash yizkad Shem Shemayim, and he says you should see that this is a third thing, is that the name of God should be sanctified, right? This is another way of connecting to the Jewish people. Why? Because obviously, if a Jew makes a Kiddush Hashem, right, the whole Jewish nation is looked at as in a positive way. If he makes a Chilul Hashem, everybody says, look at the Jews, right? They don't say, look at you. Never happens like that. When we were little kids, the Rebbe used to say to us, on the bus, you can make the biggest Chilul Hashem or Kiddush Hashem, right? If you throw a wrapper, an ice cream wrapper on the bus, or a chocolate bar wrapper on the bus, he said you can make a Chilul Hashem. I remember when I was in 3rd, 4th grade, the Rebbe said, you're going on a bus, because we all came to school by bus and by train in those days, right? He said that, you have to be careful, because they're not going to say you're a problem. They're going to say, look at the Jewish kids, right? Look at the Jewish people, right? So when they make the Kiddush Hashem, they say, wow, look at the Jewish people, right? So that is, again, in a way, connecting yourself with the Jewish people. If you make a Kiddush Hashem, it's going to connect you with everybody, because the way it's looked at as a Kiddush Hashem is everybody. It's not just looked at you made a Kiddush Hashem and you're special. No, the Jewish people are special. Ma'omrim habrios, the Gemara says, what do the brios say? They say, you know what? Look, this is what Jews are like. If it's a good thing, they say, wow, Jews are like this. Right? It's a Kiddush Hashem to do such a thing, there was a whole even controversy. The Jewish people went to Mexico, on Rosh Hashanah, right? Some of them went on Rosh Hashanah. The Israeli army sent people on Rosh Hashanah after the earthquake in Mexico. By the way, in the earthquake in Mexico, there was at least one Jewish person, a frum person actually, that was killed, right? There were other Jews that were injured, right? So it could very well be that you could go on Rosh Hashanah, right? You could actually go fly out to help them, because the Jews are very big experts in that particular area of like home demolition, right? That's their biggest expertise. They're the biggest experts in the world today on how to get people out of those places where the earthquakes have buried them, right? That's what they even have a name for it in the world about Israel's ability, and it's particularly the army that really gets involved in this. But there were other organizations that went also. That I'm sure that in Mexico, I was told that when the Jews came, right? The Jews came to Mexico, the people around started clapping. What?
There's a film of it.
There's actually a film of it. They started clapping, right? That's a tremendous Kiddush Hashem that you can make. You can't get. I'm envious of those people that that were able to make that type of Kiddush Hashem. What kind of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur they're going to have that they can make? Shos Salanta would be jealous of it. His mouth would be watering, right? So that's the yesod over here, is that the Balei Musar came up with an idea from a different aspect of the Yom HaDin, how to get through the Yom HaDin without really having to do tshuva. Because tshuva, they said, is very, very hard. There are individuals that can do tshuva, but most of us, look at it and say like, oh, who are we trying to kill? Right? The answer is no, you don't have to say that anymore. Because, of course, Rabbeinu Yonah, as I started off, said you have to think about doing tshuva. You have to mahar with tshuva. Times you have to think about what you want your next year to look like. But if you're not certain if that'll get you through the Yom HaDin, you have another way to get through the Yom HaDin, by making sure that the tzibur needs you, by becoming part of Knesset Yisrael. And if you become part of Knesset Yisrael, what he writes is, he says like this, Aval al yidei advar malo la'at lat yitkarev likones b'shem Knesset Yisrael v'roi lenes be'akadosh baruch hu sheyaseh imo b'mei hadin haba aleinu l'tova. Because then you're fitting for the miracle that God will do for the Jewish people. Because the Jewish people always get a good din, because else they would all be destroyed. So you obviously get a good din. If they all get a good din, then you go through with them, because you're actually connected to them. You actually made yourself part of the Jewish people. Thank you very much.
Yeah.